If you wish to survey the havoc of the foreign policy of Britain and France, look at what is happening and is recorded each day in the columns of the Times. Why, I read this morning about Yugoslavia, and I know something about the details of that country. The effects of the crisis for Yugoslavia can immediately be traced. Since the elections of 1935, which followed soon after the murder of King Alexander, the Serb and Croat opposition to the government of Dr. Stojadinovic have been conducting their entire campaign for the next elections under the slogan, "Back to France, England, and the Little Entente. Back to democracy." The events of the past fortnight have so triumphantly vindicated Dr. Stoyanovic's policy, his is a policy of close association with Germany, that the opposition has collapsed practically overnight. The new elections, the date of which was in doubt, are now likely to be held very soon and can result only in an overwhelming victory for Dr. Stoyanovic's government. Here was a country which 3 months ago would have stood in the line with other countries to arrest what has occurred. Again, what happened in Warsaw? The British and French ambassadors visited the foreign minister, Colonel Beck, or sought to visit him in order to ask for some mitigation in the harsh measures being pursued against Czechoslovakia about Tetchin. The door was shut in their faces. The French ambassador was not even granted an audience, and the British ambassador was given a most curt reply by a political director. The whole matter is described in the Polish press as a political indiscretion committed by those two powers. And we are today reading of the success of Colonel Beck's blow. I am not forgetting, I must say, that it is less than 20 years since British and French bayonets rescued Poland from the bondage of a century and a half. I think it is indeed a sorry episode in the history of that country, for whose freedom and rights so many of us have had warm and long sympathy. Those illustrations are typical. You will see, day after day, week after week, entire alienation of those regions. Many of those countries, in fear of the rise of the Nazi power, have already got politicians, ministers, governments who were pro-German, but there was always an enormous popular movement in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia which looked to the Western democracies and loathed the idea of having this arbitrary rule of the totalitarian system thrust upon them, and hoped that a stand would be made. All that has gone by the board. We are talking about countries which are a long way off. But what will be the position, I want to know, of France and England this year and the year afterwards? What will be the position of that Western Front of which we are in full authority the guarantors? The German army at the present time is more numerous than that of France, though not nearly so matured or perfected. Next year it will grow much larger, and its maturity will be more complete. Relieved from all anxiety in the East, and having secured resources which will greatly diminish, if not entirely remove, the deterrent of a naval blockade, the rulers of Nazi Germany will have a free choice open to them as to what direction they will turn their eyes. If the Nazi dictator should choose to look westward, as he may, bitterly will France and England regret the loss of that fine army of ancient Bohemia, which was estimated last week to require not fewer than 30 German divisions for its destruction. Can we blind ourselves to the great change which has taken place in the military situation and to the dangers we have to meet? We are in process, I believe, of adding, in 4 years, 4 battalions to the British Army. No fewer than 2 have already been completed. Here are at least 30 divisions which must now be taken into consideration upon the French front, besides the 12 that were captured when Austria was engulfed. Many people, no doubt, honestly believe that they are only giving away the interests of Czechoslovakia, whereas I fear we shall find that we have deeply compromised and perhaps fatally endangered the safety and even the independence of Great Britain and France. This is not merely a question of giving up the German colonies, as I am sure we shall be asked to do. Nor is it a question only of losing influence in Europe. It goes far deeper than that. You have to consider the character of the Nazi movement and the rule which it implies. The Prime Minister desires to see cordial relations between this country and Germany. There is no difficulty at all in having cordial relations between the peoples. Our hearts go out to them, but they have no power. But never will you have friendship with the present German government. You must have diplomatic and correct relations, but there can never be friendship between the British democracy and the Nazi power, that power which spurns Christian ethics, which cheers its onward course by a barbarous paganism, which vaunts the spirit of aggression and conquest, which derives strength and perverted pleasure from persecution, and uses, as we have seen, with pitiless brutality, the threat of murderous force. That power cannot ever be the trusted friend of the British democracy. What I find unendurable is the sense of our country falling into the power, into the orbit and influence of Nazi Germany, and of our existence becoming dependent upon their goodwill or pleasure. It is to prevent that I have tried my best to urge the maintenance of every bulwark of defense. First, the timely creation of an air force superior to anything within striking distance of our shores. Secondly, the gathering together of the collective strength of many nations. And thirdly, the making of alliances and military conventions, all within the covenant, in order to gather together forces at any rate to restrain the onward movement of this power. It has all been in vain. Every position has been successively undermined and abandoned on specious and plausible excuses. We do not want to be led upon the high road to becoming a satellite of the German Nazi system of European domination. In a very few years, perhaps in a very few months, we shall be confronted with demands with which we shall no doubt be invited to comply. Those demands may affect the surrender of territory or the surrender of liberty. I foresee and foretell that the policy of submission will carry with it restrictions upon the freedom of speech and debate in Parliament, on public platforms, and discussions in the press. For it will be said, indeed I hear it said sometimes now, that we cannot allow the Nazi system of dictatorship to be criticized by ordinary, common English politicians. Then, with the press under control, in part direct, but more potently indirect, with every organ of public opinion doped and chloroformed into acquiescence, we shall be conducted along further stages of our journey. It is a small matter to introduce into such a debate as this, but during the week I heard something of the talk of Tadpole and Taper. They were very keen upon having a general election, a sort of, if I may say so, inverted khaki election. I wish the Prime Minister had heard the speech of my honourable and gallant friend, the member for the Abbey Division of Westminster, Sir Sidney Herbert, last night. I know that no one is more patient and regular in his attendance than the Prime Minister, and it is marvellous how he is able to sit through so much of our debates. But it happened that by bad luck he was not here at that moment. I am sure, however, that if he had heard my honourable and gallant friend's speech, he would have felt very much annoyed that such a rumour could even have been circulated. I cannot believe that the Prime Minister, or any Prime Minister, possessed of a large working majority, would be capable of such an act of historic constitutional indecency. I think too highly of him. Of course, if I have misjudged him on the right side, and there is a dissolution on the Munich Agreement, on Anglo-Nazi friendship, of the state of our defences, and so forth, everyone will have to fight according to his convictions, and only a prophet could forecast the ultimate result. But, whatever the result, few things could be more fatal to our remaining chances of survival as a great power than that this country should be torn in twain upon this deadly issue of foreign policy, at a moment when, whoever the ministers may be, united effort can alone make us safe. I have been casting about to see how measures can be taken to protect us from this advance of the Nazi power, and to secure those forms of life which are so dear to us. What is the sole method that is open? The sole method that is open is for us to regain our old island independence, by acquiring that supremacy in the air which we were promised, that security in our air defences which we were assured we had, and thus to make ourselves an island once again. That, in all this grim outlook, shines out as the overwhelming fact. An effort at rearmament, the